Hello and welcome back to the Master Division of the Intermezzo Championship. After the recent results, sadly it is already clear that I won't be able to get the promotion to Grandmaster. Scipio managed to win the group already, and with that I have now to be careful to score enough points in the remaining games to not get in danger of relegation. And the game that we are taking a look at today will be a game against Scipio and Erock37. However, it has to be said that while we know now the current standings and that I don't have a chance for promotion any longer, but it wasn't known for almost all parts of the game. For most parts of the game, it was still a game for me where I thought it could be extremely important to finish before Scipio to have a chance to get the promotion in. So during the game, I was rather thinking about my fight for promotion than to score points against relegation. But now, of course, we know that sadly that is already decided and that I mainly need the points now to not get relegated. Alright, but now without further ado, we are going to take a look at the game. In this game, I'm playing the first position, and first of all, we can take a look at the leaders and wonders. And we can see that we have some science labs, not Gene Age 3. We have Einstein, Steve Jobs, and Marie Curie. There's the Spaceflight, the Manhattan Project, the Internet, but no Bill Gates and Sid Meier. We have Fleming as the only culture and theater leader. There's also no Hollywood, so not the most notchy for that in Age 3. Maybe also Gandhi to hide behind. This time I got it correct. Then we have Pierre together with the Internet, which can be a strong combination, and Mandela is there as well. We have a bunch of strong Age 2 wonders. We have Railroad, Ocean Liner Service, and Harvard. Maria together with the Ocean Liner Service, but we have no Suez Canal. Cook is there though. We have Newton, but no Nobel. We have some culture leaders with Anthony Gaudi, Shakespeare, and Darwin, but no Bach, and one military action leader with Catherine. We also have one military action leader in H1 with Jan Žižka. Barbarossa, Genghis Khan, and Nostradamus can help with the strength. We have Gutenberg, but no Leonardo. And then there's Isabella, maybe if you want to go for some colonies. Then we have the Universitas, but no Silk Road, the Great Wall, but no Emichi Castle, and the Forbidden City, but not St. Peter's Basilica as a happy face solution. I'm playing in first position. As you can see, I take the pyramids. Maybe a relatively clear choice, but still I have to think about it because I think it's very likely that Aristotle will be taken away. But I think it's also likely that library will be taken, meaning if I go for the pyramids, very likely Sun Tzu will be the only leader available for me for one civil action. There's no Hammurabi that can be revealed, so I might just very likely go for Sun Tzu. And I mean, Sun Tzu in first position is fine. On the other hand, with the pyramids, maybe I'm not really in a position where I necessarily want to push a strength game, but I can still maybe fish for some beneficial events, and it could still be fine at the end. So at the end, I still liked going for the pyramids and Sun Tzu more than, for example, grabbing Aristotle and then either going for the Colossus or maybe having to pay 2 civil actions for the Rome roads. If there would have been a Suez Canal in there, maybe Aristotle and plus Colossus would be a bit closer for me. But without that, it was then at the end relatively clear that I want to go for the pyramids. Erock just takes the library, and Scipio will end up going for rich land. And Aristotle, interestingly, because he could have also taken Aristotle's stockpile and frugality, which I maybe would have preferred over just getting the rich land. Then it is my turn, and Sun Tzu is the only leader available for 1. Confucius stays on 3. If he would have been available on 2, I at least would maybe think about going for him. Maybe I would actually go for him, but I certainly won't pay 3 civil actions for him, and so I will end up going for Sun Tzu. I elect him, building a mine and increasing my population, so a pretty standard turn. I draw 4 events actually, so I already have some events to choose from, also 3 strength events. Erock goes for Confucius, elects him, builds a mine, so he is willing to pay an additional civil action for Confucius, doesn't want to go for Caesar. Scipio takes the Rome roads, could have also gone for the Stonehenge, but Rome roads I think a fine pick. He then builds the 3rd mine, increases his population, and elects Aristotle. One reason here to take the Rome roads over the Stonehenge is also that now the iron stays on 3 civil actions for me instead of dropping down to 2, so that might have played a part in his decision making. At my turn I will push. Maybe I could also not push, saying that with the pyramids I don't want to move the deck forward, but I'm playing Sun Tzu, I want to get a little bit of information about the event deck, and I mean, with Confucius seeding a lot as well, the event deck might be flipped very quickly, so that maybe I could have even an advantage for the strength just because of the one strength from Sun Tzu. That's at least a possibility, so I started pushing, but for now I didn't commit to any of those strength events, and instead just seeded a good harvest into the deck. I see it. The development of markets have been revealed, which I will use to take 2 additional resources, which I could potentially use now to build 2 steps of the pyramids to maybe be more civil action efficient. And it could be an idea for a turn, just build 2 steps of the pyramids, leave myself with a free population without going into consumption, and then spend the remaining 2 civil actions to take one of those cards that are for 1 civil action. Maybe I could take a monarchy, which together with the pyramids can be a long-term solution, or just one of those yellow cards. Maybe even the theocracy if I want to go for something military heavy, but I think I wouldn't want to commit to that in this position. So I think that could be a very reasonable turn. At the end, however, I was willing to take that early iron for 3 civil actions, which is expensive, especially because I don't have a leader that gives me additional signs, so it is certainly possible that I don't have the ability to go for it already at the next turn. But Irok will see it, I will again see it, and who knows, maybe Scipio will even see it as well. So there is maybe a decent chance that I could get help from the developments, either development of civil life, trade routes, or science, and that I maybe can already invest into the iron at the next turn. If not, then maybe at least there are some more resources revealed and I can maybe finish the pyramids. So I at the end was willing to pay that price, otherwise I would just leave the iron available to Irok, who has some additional science production and who can make the iron work very nicely. So I felt at the end better to have it in my own hands, but it could have also been a fine move, as said, to just start working the pyramids to be civil action efficient and maybe take the monarchy or something. I keep the foray in the call to arms. I draw a bunch of more events, also 2 tactics, the Legion and Heavy Cavalry. Irok seeds, the development of settlement has been revealed. He starts working on the library, doesn't build his second lab for now, takes the monarchy, increases his population. Oh, he does actually build a second lab, so he gets that science production started and has the monarchy to maybe invest the additional science in that he gets from Confucius and soon from the library. Scipio seeds and the development of religion has been revealed. I get a bit lucky because I don't have a free population, but before the development of religion, the development of settlement was revealed, so I actually have a free population to take that free religion, which I was happy about. Scipio just takes the additional resources from the development of markets and then finishes the Rome roads. At my turn, I was willing to seed, and I actually seeded a foray into the deck, so I was willing to commit to a strength event here. Partly because the event deck is indeed now moving forward very quickly, so maybe just with the strength of Sun Tzu I could already be in a position to win it. I don't necessarily see Irok increasing his military strength by a significant amount at his next turn, and Scipio, if he doesn't have something like fighting band, might also not get stronger, so I felt like I have already a good chance of maybe winning the foray just because I have the 1 strength from Sun Tzu. Then I also thought it could be very nice if I get some additional resources, which could allow me to finish the pyramids a turn earlier, or get some additional science, which could allow me to get the iron earlier. So I just felt like revealing a development could also be quite nice. Of course, then I could have seeded one of the peaceful events. But I felt like I have the tactic, and I also felt like I will go for Barbarossa for 1 civil action this turn. And with that, I felt good enough prepared to, in this position, commit to the foray. And there are the development of trade runes revealed, which gives me an interesting choice, because now I can actually both either finish the pyramids or go for the iron already. I have now to decide which I want more. And as you can see, I will go for the iron, I can take the free religion. Now there's one thing that I was a bit unhappy about, because one reason why I felt that I can maybe go for the iron is that there are some decent H1 wonders in the game, of course also some decent H2 wonders, but I felt like I can maybe go for the iron, finish the pyramids, and then at the end of H1 grab one of those wonders. But all of the H1 wonders are on the row now, only the Taj Mahal, which is maybe not really my favorite wonder, is left. So with that, I didn't feel too great about having invested 3 civil actions into the iron, and maybe I could be a little bit in trouble to invest those resources effectively. Maybe I need to hope for an early H2 wonder. Maybe I need to go for the Taj Mahal. You can of course go for the alchemy, but I just think if you go for an early iron, it's just a lot better if you maybe get an additional H1 wonder and invest those resources effectively. So I was not too happy to see that actually all of those wonders are revealed that early. I decide to go for the iron. I think starting the resource production as early as possible is just quite strong. I then go for one upgrade, a second upgrade, and I'm just out of corruption so that I can grab Barbarossa. I have a lot of food saved up. I have a happy face from the free religion, so soon I might be able to replace Sun Tzu and then get some Barbarossa activations going. And I actually decided to already reveal the Legion tactic. First of all, that allows me to keep more cards in hand, and second of all, that allows me to fulfill the Legion tactic at the next turn, for example with Barbarossa, in case I want to get stronger or maybe even get a bit threatening towards my opponents. I keep the call to arms, another strength event, and a heavy cavalry tactic. I actually draw 3 aggressions here. Erock Seeds, the event deck flips, the development of planning has been revealed. The options for the development of planning are development of science, crafts, and politics. I think Erock takes the additional science, which allows him to go for the monarchy, finishes the library, gets some additional science production from that. I was interested to see will he go for one of those wonders, but maybe he will rather grab the iron, but he does neither of those things. He instead just grabs Gutenberg and increases his population, is fine with just leaving the iron on 2 civil actions for Scipio, making it maybe a bit difficult for him to take that copy of iron, and in case he doesn't get it, then I mean he has Gutenberg and can maybe hope to get one of the alchemies. There's even one already coming down the row, so I think there's certainly some sense to it. That also gave me a little bit of hope, because Scipio has now to decide, does he want to go for the iron, or will he be the player without the iron? And if he goes for the iron, then he very likely doesn't have the actions to take the Universitas away, meaning that maybe I could actually still have a chance to get one of those wonders, because one of the developments is the development of crafts. Only because of that I can finish the pyramids. Now I could even still get a chance to go for the Universitas potentially, which I think would be very strong for me. But it could also be that Scipio just wants to go for the Universitas himself, which I think would also be quite strong for him. So I was very interested to see what his decision will be. Scipio first of all seeds. Sadly the foray isn't revealed yet, instead the knowledge of the ancients. I actually still have my wonder under construction, so I gain 2 additional resources. And he will go for the iron, develops it, upgrades one, and builds a warrior to get stronger than Erock, so he prefers to go for the iron production here. And I'm not sure if I necessarily agree with his choice here, because same as for me, or at least as it looked for me, the H1 wonders are all gone, so he might have some difficulties to invest at iron production nicely. He is not building a second lab yet, is somewhat low in science despite having Aristotle, so maybe I would have actually preferred it here to go for the Universitas and also deny the Universitas. For me now, of course, he's denying the iron from Erock, but I think it's fine to maybe wait for coal, and for now he had some additional resource production from the Rome roads, and with the Universitas and the Rome roads he will have lots of science in H2, can maybe go for an H2 government form. I think I probably would prefer that setup with the Universitas, but of course the iron is still not bad, but in this position maybe he could have some difficulties to invest the resources nicely. It's my turn, and I decide to push the call to arms, which is not without risk, because I have a lot of food saved up, and I want to go for Barbarossa. I don't have knowledge about rats, so rats could be very bad, and I mean Scipio has now some food saved up, so it's very unlikely that he has seeded the rats, but Erock, who has also seeded more events into the deck, certainly could have seeded the rats. But then again, there could also be the foray revealed or some other strength events, and so at the end I was willing to push and move the deck forward, but I think it could also be a fine choice to rather just not seed here and not take the risk of getting hit by rats. And I was very happy to see that I don't get punished. Instead, the foray is revealed, and I will actually use the foray to take 3 additional resources, and you will see very soon why I just take resources, because now with the additional resources from development of crafts, knowledge of the ancients, and the foray, I think I have a very clear path ahead of me on how I can continue the game. I will finish the pyramids this turn. I will elect Barbarossa. I will take the Universitas, and then I will do 2 Barbarossa activations, putting me at 6 strength, getting 2 warriors to fulfill the now upgraded Legion tactic, and as you can see, I'm at 4+5 resources, and thanks to all of those resources that I got from the events, I have now just enough to finish the Universitas at the next turn, and I was extremely happy about getting that Universitas, because now I have something very useful to invest my resources into from the Iron. I think the University, starting with early Iron and then going into Universitas, is just one of the very good setups or things that you can get during H1, and so I was extremely happy to do this. And I also didn't consider any other turn too closely. I think that's just too strong. Of course, I could take the Alchemy, maybe deny it from E-Rock or something, but I think that's just too strong for myself, and with that, that was my turn. And I mean, maybe it does put a bit of pressure on my opponents. I have 2 aggressions in hand. If they are not careful, maybe I could drive on E-Rock Seeds. The Good Harvest is revealed, so even more food for Barbarossa. That was seeded by me, but so it was also another reason why I was willing to go for Barbarossa. E-Rock builds a warrior, maybe to make sure to be able to defend against an aggression, takes and develops the Masonry, takes the Alchemy without Gutenberg, but will now elect Gutenberg and develops the Alchemy with Gutenberg, so wants to be able to start some upgrades already the next turn, so that the science production isn't too much delayed, and then he also takes the Theology, which could help him to fix his happy faces, maybe when the age ends. Scipio is a bit in a difficult spot. He also took 3 resources from the foray, because he has actually lots of blue tokens lying around. And now that the Good Harvest was revealed as well, so all the events, I mean, the knowledge of the ancients didn't give my opponents additional resources or food, but for me, I got resources, food, so a lot of stuff gained by the events. And Scipio is actually willing to take that Nostradamus for 2 civil actions, which I guess is a fine pick on one hand. On the other hand, he really, maybe would need to spend all of his civil actions to maybe get out of corruption and get his, and to develop his civilization, but maybe he is just needing Nostradamus here to not be too much in danger against my Barbarossa, and so he pays 2 civil actions for him, which I think in his position is quite expensive, then increases his population and actually builds an additional mine, which is an interesting move. And again, I'm not sure if I necessarily agree with it, because the situation is unchanged, that for the next turns it might be difficult for Scipio to invest a resource into. He is on low civil actions, on low science, and same as, for example, if you go for Machu Picchu, you need civil actions, and to get civil actions you need science, and so you need science and civil actions to just invest your additional resources nicely from the Machu Picchu. And with going for that 4th mine, he also maybe could end up struggling to invest the resources nicely. So I'm not sure if I would do the same here. Maybe I would also just build a 2nd lab that also would at least make sure to have only 2 corruption, and I think the science production might be needed more here than the additional resource production. So I'm not really, I think, agreeing with the setup that he's going for, but on the other hand, it's still a bit scary seeing an opponent with that strong resource production, because if he should manage to find a nice way to invest those resources, it certainly could still get dangerous, or he could maybe get into a strong position, and in H2 at least he will get some additional science production from the Roman roads. Now it's my turn, and it's the question, should I try one of those aggressions? I think it's very unlikely that one will get through. E-Rock made sure to build that 1 warrior. It's very likely that he has at least drawn 1 defense card. But I think recently I decided to maybe try aggressions out a little bit more often, because of course I know it from myself, how often I'm just bluffing and am actually vulnerable to an aggression. And if you maybe get a little bit of if you are known for maybe trying aggressions out more often, maybe that also puts a little bit of pressure on your opponents when they decide about their turn, and maybe they will not be willing to be greedy, and which also could cost them. And if they are greedy, I maybe should try to punish them. And so I decided to play an aggression, because very likely I won't be able to go for those aggressions in the near future. I can't significantly increase my strength. So drawing that aggression costs me 1 H1 draw, which could be useful. Getting an event to seed could be nice, but it's only one draw. And while I thought it's unlikely that the aggression gets through, even if it's only a 10% chance, then in 1 out of 10 games I get a really big swing against E-Rock here. And so I decided that I am willing to sacrifice that one draw. I have a tactic already. I could need events, but I at the end was willing to try an aggression, expecting that it will be defended though. And it is defended, so E-Rock has the expected defense card, but who knows? As I said, in 1 out of 10 games, maybe it would have gone through, and then that swing would be really big. This turn I will just finish the Universitas. I want to get my science production going. I have then 2 civil actions left, and there are some things that I could take here. I could, of course, just take the breakthrough. I have now some decent science production, but getting a breakthrough for 1 civil action is just very strong. I could also take the urban growth, but I think the breakthrough is the more valuable yellow card. I could also, of course, take both of those cards. Then there's a copy of knights. Just having a cavalry technology could be nice, but I have that upgraded legion tactic. Very likely I won't need the knights in the near future, and then there are cavalrymen in H2, so I think the knights are not too important. What could be considered here though are the bread and circuses. There's Gaudi, Darwin and Pierre in the game, and also with Barbarossa, if I take the bread and circuses and then increase my population once, build a bread and circuses with the amount of food that I still have saved up, maybe I can then go for another Barbarossa activation, which could be quite nice, while otherwise I might have just some issues with the happy faces, which could prevent me from going for another Barbarossa activation. And so I think the bread and circuses are something to consider here. The thing is, I still don't have knowledge about rats, and because of that, and I think I had knowledge about pestilence, but not about rats. So increasing my population would just make me a lot safer from that event. And so I was really thinking about, do I increase my population and take the breakthrough? Do I increase my population and take the bread and circuses? Do I just take both breakthrough and bread and circuses? This was mainly between those 3 variations that I considered. The drama for Antoni Gaudi maybe could be considered, but without Bach and Marlene, I think it's not as valuable as those other cards here. At the end, I decided to just take the breakthrough and increase my population. Yes, the bread and circuses could end up being nice, but there's also another copy coming, which I might be able to get, because Scipio still needs a happy face solution maybe. E-Rock has already the theology, so I might miss out on the copy of bread and circuses, but even then it's also maybe not too bad. I at the moment don't have any uprising issues, so at the end I wanted to secure myself the science, but I was not willing to be vulnerable to rats. I draw only 1 card, another aggression, so now I do maybe get a bit punished for trying that aggression with not getting an event to seed. E-Rock uses Gutenberg to get this one, the first alchemy upgrade going, is building a warrior, adopting the legion tactic to not be the weakest after his turn, takes a copy of Code of Laws, a copy of Breakthrough, soon will be able to upgrade his monarchy and be at 6 civil actions, which is nice, and then also takes in the urban growth to be able to get the last Gutenberg upgrade even for free. Scipio Seeds and a Confucius event has been revealed, so all gain 1 additional science. He will increase his population, builds a warrior, goes for an upgrade, is now at 8 resource production, increases his population and takes the theology, still doesn't build his second lab. I mean, maybe he wants to go either into printing press or maybe hopes to get into journalism, but again, maybe instead of the iron upgrade, it could have been an idea to just build a second lab, because I still think he needs the science production more than the resource production, but maybe he doesn't want to commit that worker yet. He also doesn't go for the alchemy, maybe he wants to wait for H2 things to invest into, but then again, he might struggle to invest those resources. Now it is my turn. I am the strongest, so I kinda would like to see it, but I don't have the option to do so. And this turn it was a bit of a struggle or a bit of a question on how do I want to spend my civil actions. Because basically I can do one iron upgrade. I could increase my population normally, but there's a bread and circuses coming down the row, and now Scipio has actually committed to a theology, so I thought it should hopefully be likely that I get that copy at the next turn, and with that I thought instead of increasing my population normally, I rather want to do a Barbarossa activation, especially because if I don't increase my strength, I'm actually the weakest on tie breaks after my turn. So when I do a Barbarossa activation to increase my population, I can upgrade a mine, and then I have 4 civil actions left that I basically can mostly only use to take some cards. I mean, I can use the monarchy now that I take it. I could also think about, for example, taking and developing the alchemy, but I don't need it that urgently, and with that I think it would be a commitment that I would not be too happy to doing, so I at the end decided to go for the monarchy. A third military action is not bad to have. I have the pyramid, so the monarchy can be a nice long-term solution because I have a chance to get either code of laws or justice system on top and be on 7 civil actions when going into H3. So I felt like it's a good position to commit to the monarchy here. Then I still have 4 civil actions left. I will use Barbarossa to get a warrior. I will upgrade a mine. I could take irrigation, maybe for the ocean liner service, that's the last copy, and then only take one of those cards for one civil action. That could be an idea. Maybe it could be the right choice. But at the end I rather decided to take 3 cards from the one civil action area. I take the reserves, the knights, and the alchemy. The reserves I think are nice in the situation because with the 2 additional food I can get one more Barbarossa activation going at some point, and if I indeed at the next turn can maybe go for the bread and circuses, then I also have the happy faces to do that. So I think the reserves for Barbarossa is just nice to have. Then it's maybe a question of do I rather want to have just the irrigation or maybe the knights plus the alchemy. As said, I maybe don't need the alchemy necessarily with having the universitas, but it still can be a nice thing to invest into the alchemy. Then I would be at 6 science production. It might be good enough for the rest of the game, and it could give me something to do. But I mean, missing out on the irrigation could be punished. None of my opponents has gone for the irrigation, so there could be some contention over the H2 population income solutions. So it certainly could also be fine to take the irrigation here. But at the end, I decided that I rather want to have those 2 technologies. If I draw an H2 tactic, then the knights, of course, also could be quite nice to have in hand in case I don't have a good shot at getting the cavalryman. I draw 2 cards, a territory and a trade routes agreement. Irok increases his population, develops the code of laws, goes for another upgrade with Gutenberg, takes the irrigation, and then goes for upgrade to theology. Also takes the printing press so that he can potentially go for more Gutenberg activations down the line. Scipio seeds, and at that point I realized that I got extremely lucky here. The reds are revealed at the perfect moment for me after I have gone for all of the Barbarossa activations. I mean, the first 2 events when they were revealed, I had, I think, 6 food lying around and haven't had elected Barbarossa yet, so if the reds would have been revealed at that time, maybe instead of the foray when I decided to take the risk and seed, it could have been quite a disaster for me, missing out on all of the Barbarossa activations. So I got quite lucky here. That could have definitely gone differently, and with a bit of bad luck, or with not even that much bad luck, with less good luck, it could have been quite a bit more annoying for me. So I was quite happy that I, with maybe Vlada's help, managed to dodge those reds. Scipio adopts the Legion tactic, spending his H1 military actions, making sure to not be the weakest, upgrades the theology so that he doesn't have to do it at the next turn. Now finally builds the second lab and also upgrades his last mine, so spends all of his civil actions. And the civilization is now even at 9 resource production, but still in low civil actions, not the most science, so we'll have to see if he finds a way to invest those resources. Now it is my turn. I am the strongest, and with that I was willing to push the historic territory into the deck, and I was happy to see that I win the crusades here, so I do get rewarded for getting another warrior out, again only possible because the reds were that late. So I gain a bit of culture, which is nice because before those were revealed I was a bit behind in culture. Now it's very equal. Of course, Scipio and Erog might get ahead again because they get some culture out of their leaders, but I'm not too much behind, and that I was happy to see. I think I did enough knowledge about rebellion, and both of my opponents did put some effort into investing into theology already, so I felt like I kind of want to go for the bread and circuses here. I need to do it soon anyway, of course. I could, for example, go for the Code of Laws first, but then I would just take cards from the row, and I think spending some actions already is quite nice. I also thought about just going for 2 alchemy upgrades, but at the end I felt it's the safest to just fix my happy faces here, also gain a little bit of additional strength, and then I think the Code of Laws to upgrade my monarchy further, especially with my good science production, is a card that I kinda have to take or really want to take. And then I have 1 civil action left, and I will use that civil action to take another copy of reserves, because the one tiny bit bad thing that the reds still has had as a consequence for me is that with now having 0 instead of 1 food, playing 1 reserves for food is not enough to get another Barbarossa activations. Now that I have a second reserves, I could again play both reserves for food, get a Barbarossa activation. You might argue that it's a bit inefficient to play 2 H1 reserves to go for 1 Barbarossa activation, but then again 1 Barbarossa activation is just so extremely valuable, saving you a civil action, a food and a resource, so I do think it could still be worth it potentially, and with that I was willing to take the reserves over, for example, something like cartography or one of the other yellow cards. I draw some cards, the strategic territory and a colonization card. H2 starts. Erog uses Gutenberg to develop the printing press, takes the swordsman, the engineering genius, develops the swordsman and makes sure to get stronger, which means I'm the weakest at Scipio's turn, so I could get punished. I was now happy that the Crusades were already out, but of course there might be some other strength events, even one that I've seeded myself, the Call to Arms, I could get hit by now. Scipio seeds, and again, I do get a bit lucky with the event order. The Crusades are out when I was the strongest, then I fixed my happy faces, now the Rebellion is revealed. So yeah, I mean, both of my opponents going for theology was just a bit of a hint. And maybe again I shouldn't have seeded, but it's only 1 out of 5 events, even if it's in there. And there could be strength events, so I think it was reasonable to push, especially because I had only one unhappy worker, and if I lose the civil actions, I don't necessarily need to go for bread and circuses immediately. Maybe could have gone for the Code of Laws first, but again, a good event order so far for me in this game. Scipio takes the constitutional monarchy, so one thing that we discussed that he needs are more civil actions, and that of course might be a nice way for him to get those. And then he also needs to invest his resource into something, and for that he will go for the journalisms. It's expensive, spending his whole turn just to take those 2 cards. Also, he at the moment doesn't necessarily have the population to build those journalisms, but yeah, still those 2 things might be useful for him at some point, and with that he is willing here to invest his whole turn into taking those 2 cards. At my turn I'm the weakest, so I don't want to push here. And I also don't necessarily want to stay the weakest, because I know that a Call to Arms is coming, there might be other strength events coming, Erog to put a bit of effort into getting stronger, Scipio not that much, but he is at least in a position where he is not the weakest at the moment. While I don't like it too much to go into Swordsman, when maybe it is a position where I could also wait for Rifleman in this position, I just wanted to make sure to get stronger with the Call to Arms and potential other strength events coming. So I developed the Swordsman, go for 2 upgrades, which is enough to make sure to not to be the strongest now. I still have 4 civil actions left, and it's the question, how do I invest those? I could think about taking the cannons for 3, just securing them for myself. I could think about taking the Eiffel Tower, investing my resources, but I think there are better wonders to come. And here I decided that, yeah, I took it not necessarily expecting that I will invest into it, but I will actually go for the alchemy now. I have just enough science to develop it, go for 2 upgrades. Now I'm at 6 science production, which also means that I have just enough for the Code of Laws at the next turn, so it just felt very smooth. I can get those upgrades in, I have now some very strong science production, and I just have enough to go for Code of Laws at the next turn, so I don't slow my development down in regards how quickly I get more civil actions. And then I can also just invest my actions, spending a lot of civil actions to just take some cards, either some yellows, a wonder, or the cannons. I think the cannons could certainly be considered, but I don't have a tactic yet, and it would still be somewhat expensive to take them for 3. And so I rather went for the alchemy and then took the rich land with the last civil action, which I can maybe use to get some selective breeding upgrades at some point. I draw an economic progress. Erok doesn't see it. He gets an early copy of coal, so that might help him a bit here. Can go for 1 upgrade. Can use the urban growth to build printing press for 3 with Gutenberg. And then he takes the efficient upgrade and the engineering genius. He also isn't willing to take the cannons, interestingly. I mean, for him it's a bit greedy. He could have, instead of the efficient upgrade, taken the cannons, but I mean, what can I say? I also didn't take them. Then Scipio seeds, the cultural influence is revealed, so no strength event yet. That doesn't change too much. And Scipio just goes for the revolution here. At least has only 2 corruption. But yeah, I mean, like this, he fixes the civil actions while still having some science left so that he can invest into journalism. Maybe that copy of scientific method could be available for him. So he just tries his best to get into a position where he can start use all of those additional resources that he's having. He misses out on the cannons for 1, so I was happy that I will actually get them for 1 civil action this turn. And also I'm still the strongest, so I was willing to push. I didn't necessarily want to push the economic progress because Erok starts to go for the coal. Scipio has those 4 mines. I mean, he has some the challenge to invest those at the moment anyway, but it could still be helpful. And at the moment it's unclear who will be the players who get the selective breeding, so instead of committing to the economic progress, I rather just seeded a colony in there because there's no Suez Canal in there, so even if I don't win it, it's maybe not too bad. And I will have actually some spare infantry units, and thought that if I could convert those into some colonies, I have already seeded the historic territory, then that could be quite fine for me. I seed, and the Reign of Terror is revealed, so there's a strength event, meaning the last event in the deck is now the Call to Arms. Scipio will lose a population. That's a setback for him. He is already low in population. Losing 1 is quite hurtful and makes it even more challenging for him to invest his resources nicely. I start my turn by developing the Code of Laws. And yeah, I thought now it is time to replace Barbarossa, because at the moment I'm at 0 food income and also 0 food saved up. I have to reduce reserves in hand. And there's Antoni Gaudi available in the row, so I can replace Barbarossa and just get some culture production going, plus the ability to save some science later on. It is now, but there are a lot of variations how I could play this turn, because there are a lot of cards that are potentially interesting for me. I want to go for Antoni Gaudi. The cannons are basically a must grab, so I think I started by taking those 2 cards. But then there is a copy of Architecture, which could be interesting with my decent science income. There is an urban growth, but there's also a copy of Opera and Journalisms for 2 civil actions in a row, which I might need to get into Antoni Gaudi. And if I don't take the Journalisms, those are even gone for good. So then only 1 copy of Opera would be left. So I contemplated about just taking 1 of those for 2, just making sure that at some point I have something better to invest into for Antoni Gaudi. But if I take those for 2, I maybe miss out on 1 of those actions for 1. I mean, not necessarily. I have a bit of hand space, especially if I elect Antoni Gaudi. But there's also the question of, do I want to get 1 more Barbarossa activation before I replace Barbarossa with Gaudi? I have those 2 reserves in hand. When I play both of them for food, I can go for 1 more Barbarossa activation and then switch to Antoni Gaudi. And that is what I decided to do at the end. I first of all take the Architecture, which I think has just a lot of potential, play both of those reserves for food, activate Barbarossa, switch to Antoni Gaudi, and then take that copy of Urban Growth. So I think that's a very efficient turn, getting the activation, just taking cards for 1 civil action, with the downside of potentially missing out on the ability to produce even more culture with Antoni Gaudi if I should miss out on that last copy of Opera. The thing is, while journalism would be nice, at the moment I don't have any population income, and also at some point I will lose those 2 yellow tokens. I think finding the population to invest into journalism is quite challenging here. And so I felt like the Opera might be the better thing for me to invest into anyway, because I also have some decent science production here. And then when I rather want to go for the opera, there is at least a copy left. Maybe it won't be taken away, and even if it is taken away, I think my next turns, I don't necessarily will go for those. I need population income first. I maybe will go for one more wonder with the architecture, which was also a reason why I wanted to have that, as I expected to at least go for one more H2 wonder, if possible. And so at the end I felt like maybe I will have enough stuff to do for H2, and if I then miss out on a second copy of Opera, at least I might be able to get into movies or multimedias in H3, hopefully. I draw some cards, the Independence Declaration and an Aggression. Iro goes for another coal upgrade, takes the strategy, and is actually willing to invest 3 civil actions into the selective breeding, which is expensive, especially with him having the irrigation in hand, especially also with having 2 engineering geniuses, and maybe the ocean liner service could still be interesting, then the irrigation could be perfectly fine for him, so I think it's expensive. But then again, on the other hand, with taking that for 3, he makes sure that one of his opponents will be playing without selective breeding and is maybe reliant then on the ocean liner service. So I was a bit worried seeing those 2 cards revealed and now seeing E-Rock take actually one of those for 3 civil actions. So if Scipio takes the other one, I don't have the selective breeding available. Scipio first of all opens the call to arms. He probably knew that it was in there with Nostradamus. I'm not sure when exactly I see that, maybe he didn't know it, but he reveals it as only the second weakest thanks to Nostradamus, loses a population, decides to lose a farm, which, thanks to going back into the next area of the Yellow Bank, doesn't result in any food loss, but is still certainly not ideal and could make it more difficult for him to get his population fixed at some point. He takes the Rifleman, invests into those, gets stronger, and is able to invest some of his resources, and he takes the selective breeding, doesn't want to be reliant on the ocean liner service, which I think is a fair call, takes the frugality to get more population as soon as he is able to go for that selective breeding, and yeah, that means that now I maybe have to hope for the ocean liner service here. Now it is my turn. I am the strongest and only the second weakest. I could push, and that's also what I will do. I don't have a colony, so for now the Independence Declaration is fine to see. There are of course 2 colonies coming, the strategic and the historic territories, so I could now win one and then lose one potentially. It's not without risk, but I was still at the end willing to see it, because if those colonies are revealed, at least now I am winning by tie breaks. And while I don't have a lot of colonization cards in hand, the one that I have in hand is still from H1. I also felt that I have those spare workers, but both of my opponents, I mean, they have no selective breeding in hand, but they are at the moment still in low population, and they have no excess units that they don't need for the Legion. So for them, especially because those are maybe not the strongest colonies, maybe they will even just pass or not bid that much. So I was having some hope that I will be able to win a colony if it is revealed. There is the historic territory revealed, and indeed, both of my opponents' pass don't want to sacrifice a population right now, and I was very happy because I have maybe too many infantry units at the moment anyway, so converting this warrior into 6 culture and a happy face, I was very happy to see. Now it's the question on what to do. The selective breeding is sadly taken away, and the ocean liner service not in the row yet, so that's a bit of a problem. I thought about going for a turn where I just take a couple of cards, but I didn't find a nice one, and at the end it boiled down to taking one of those wonders, which is quite expensive, but it just felt like the best thing to do to further improve my civilization. And I had to consider how nice those wonders are for myself and how strong those would be for my opponent, so what I have to maybe consider when I think about the denial. And when we just think about what wonder I would prefer to have, or what benefits from the wonder, I think that's the railroad. I have already decent science production, just getting even more resources, maybe having the option of going into an oil in case one is available early could be quite strong. The 5 strength is very helpful. But the problem is, those wonders cost me 5 civil actions to take. I can spend 1 to develop the architecture, then I have 1 civil action left, and thanks to the Harvard College costing 1 civil action less than the railroad, I could just take the Harvard College, develop architecture and finish the Harvard College, while I cannot finish the railroad, which I think makes quite a difference here, because the Harvard College will give me the benefit just one turn earlier, and not only that, I have that wonder then already finished, meaning I then have again a free wonder slot to go for the ocean liner, and if I take the railroad, and even if I build 3 steps, I first have to build a step and then can go for the ocean liner, which could make a difference on whether I'm able to obtain the ocean liner or not. So while the benefits from the railroad I think are better with the ability to finish the Harvard College directly, I thought that is maybe the better choice for myself. And for my opponents, I felt like the railroad is better for E-Rock, while the Harvard College is clearly better for Scipio. The thing is, if I just take the Harvard College here, the railroad stays on 3, and E-Rock has lost 2 civil actions to the call to arms, so I felt like it's maybe unlikely that he will take the railroad for all of his actions. And if the railroad is available for Scipio, he might invest into it, because he just needs to invest his resources somehow, but I don't think it's the ideal thing, and the Harvard College I felt like would even be extremely strong for him. Especially the railroad, it stays here on E-Rock's turn, he has only 4 civil actions, he might not take a lot of cards, so likely the railroad will stick on the 2 civil actions area, meaning Scipio can't take and finish it, while the Harvard College would be more likely to drop down to 1 civil action. Even if it doesn't, he could still just take and finish it, and I think that would improve his turn or his position by a lot. So at the end I also felt that the Harvard College is the more important wonder to deny here, and with that it was at the end clear for me that I will go for the Harvard College and just finish it, going up to 9 science production, having invested a lot of resources, but now I have the wonder finished, so I can still take the ocean liner service afterwards, and if I should miss out on the ocean liner, then I kinda need to invest into wonders maybe anyway, because I don't have any population to put into any new buildings or something. I draw some cards here, no tactic yet, but the International Trade Agreement pact, which is nice to draw. I was now of course hoping that maybe I will get the ocean liner service at my next turn, however if it is revealed before Scipio's turn, then he might just deny it, so it could end up being tricky, and that I get the ocean liner. E-Rock goes for farm upgrades, make sure to get the population income, can maybe now still use the frugality 1 before it will be discarded to the end of the age. Then another colony will be revealed. Again, I was willing to bid 1 unit and my colonization card, but this time E-Rock is willing to bid. He's just started his food income, so can maybe rebuild at the next turn, and with that he's able to win it. And Scipio is willing to go for the railroad here. Could have maybe just done some other stuff, but he can still go for a food upgrade if he wants to, and doesn't have enough science to get into scientific method after having invested into the rifleman. Maybe should have waited with those, but it's a a bit of a tough position that he put himself into, and we can see now that if maybe he would have built a second lab a little bit earlier in H1, now the 1 science production could just make a very big difference, but at least he will find something to invest into the railroad. Getting more resource production is not really the thing that he needs here though, so it's mainly for the 5 additional strength. He then takes the scientific method, the reserves, and a cavalryman. Could have invested into selective breeding, but maybe then again he would be low science, so maybe he rather wants to be able to go into for scientific methods first, but then again the food production is delayed, so he put himself into a challenging position on one hand. On the other hand, thanks to Nostradamus, he is not at all behind in culture, and only 2 culture behind me, and also with the railroad he will maybe be the strength leader, so while all of his turns felt somewhat awkward and just a bit of a struggle, he might still, if he goes for scientific method now, the railroad out of the sudden still be in a position to just, maybe have a solid position in H3. But for now I think it's still a bit of a tough position. My turn, I will offer the International Trade Agreement. I will offer it to E-Rock. I will take additional food income for myself, hoping, regardless of whether I get the ocean liner or not, that food income will maybe help me to not have any famine issues, so I think it's the better thing for me. Here it was a bit of a tough choice, because I felt, and I actually offered it to Scipio, I think I said E-Rock. I offered it to Scipio, and that was a bit of a tough choice. I do think when we just take a look at the game, then Scipio is just a better target here, because he has already more than enough resources. He will finish the railroad, will get even more resource production, so I don't think he really needs it that much. While for Iraq, he also has some solid resource production, but not nearly as much saved up. Is in a position to maybe better invest those resources. So I think for him, the one additional resource would be a lot stronger. But when we remember how the standings looked after the first batch of games has finished, then and with not knowing the just recently finished games yet, of course, when I offered it packed, I very much thought that I want to really finish before Scipio in this game to still have have a chance to overtake him. But the thing is, it could also just be important to be able to win this game. And if I just finish second and Scipio last, maybe that will not be good enough. Maybe I need to finish first. Maybe I need to finish before Iraq. I had to think about what position do I evaluate as better. And while Scipio's position still looks challenging, as said, maybe he will actually be fine soon. But I still thought Iraq's position is maybe just a bit better, because for him, just things are going a bit more smoothly. And so I thought his position might be a bit better. It might still be important to, of course, also finish before him. And for him, the resource production model might be more valuable. So despite competing against Scipio, at least I thought that I will compete against Scipio, I offered it to him. Now, with knowing that I can't reach him anyway, maybe it was especially good to not offer it to Iraq here. Sadly, as you can see, the ocean liner service is not revealed yet, so I was a bit worried about it. If I don't get that wonder, it could end up being a bit tricky for me. And generally, with not having the ability to take the ocean liner service here, it was the question on how do I want to invest my actions here. Because I have 7 actions. As you can see, the first one I spent on taking the breakthrough, and I basically can just take a bunch of cards here. I at least thought at first. Maybe develop the cannons or something to make space in my hand, just take as many yellows as possible, and then at least I can take some of them for cheap. Those are relatively strong yellow cards, so it felt not too bad to just take all of those yellow cards, but it also didn't really feel that great. But is there any alternative? And I came to the conclusion that there is one. And through the ages, when you maybe start reading some strategy guides, when you are starting to learn the game, there are maybe some ground rules that are in almost all of the cases maybe the right thing to do. But I think in order to reach high-level play, you also need to know when it is the right time to break those ground rules. And I thought that maybe here is the right position to break one of those ground rules. And the ground rule that I'm talking about is that you shouldn't really upgrade those H1 things to H2 things, because it's not that efficient. But here I decided to break with the ground rule and actually decided to go for the coal. And I will go for 3 upgrades here. It's of course still not the greatest thing to do, but I have that rich land in hand. I can take the sufficient upgrade and use it with the Harvard College immediately, meaning 2 of those upgrades I get extremely cheap. Only for the third one I have to pay without the yellow card. Thanks to having gone for the Harvard College, I have some really strong science production. Of course, I might still want to get into an H2 government form, but ideally I was hoping to get the ocean liner service at the next turn. At least Scipio is not in a position to take it away. And then at the next turn, there are, if at all, only very few H3 cards revealed, so a government form might not be there anyway. And in 2 turns, despite doing the investment into coal, I actually then have again enough science to get into H3 government form. So I felt like I can go for those upgrades and still go for an H3 government form without too much problems because of having my very strong science income. And then just using my turn now and at least in regards to what yellow cards I can use, and the rich land might just be stuck in hand for a while if I don't use it now, because I don't know when I have a chance to get the mechanized agriculture, and if I should end up getting the ocean liner, I might not need the mechanized agriculture at all. So that might just be sitting in my hand. The efficient upgrade I will now be able to use a lot better. And with that, I actually felt like it is now a good position to go for that coal here. I develop it not using the breakthrough with the Harvard College so that I can still use that efficient upgrade. And I will just go for the last upgrade. I could have taken a copy of reserves here. But there's another advantage of going for that coal line, and that is that I reveal fewer cards. While it maybe could have been also nice to just load up in a bunch of yellows, I think a very much important thing in that position is whether I get the Ocean Liner service or not. And the only player who can deny me the Ocean Liner is Irok. He has the Masonry, he has 2 Engineering Geniuses, so I felt like it is definitely possible that if the Ocean Liner service is revealed, he might just take it away, also with seeing how much I need it. And if I take more cards, first of all, it's of course more likely that the Ocean Liner service is revealed, that Irok can take it away. And now that I only take those cards, the Ocean Liner service will guaranteed, even if it is revealed, stay in the 3 civil action area, so that it at least is also maybe a bit more difficult for Irok to take the Ocean Liner service. So that was another reason why I think going for that coal here is better than just taking a bunch of yellows. And I mean, at least I am now in 9 resource production. I have also the economic progress that I might still put into the deck, so I have catched up on my opponents on resource income, and I maybe have enough science to do all of this here. I draw some cards, the Conquistadors tactics, finally a tactic, but not really the greatest one. And I was very pleased to see that the Ocean Liner service is not revealed. I was now hoping that it will be revealed very shortly afterwards, because only if it lands into the 2 civil action area for me, I'm able to just take and finish it. And I am also able, resource-wise, to take and finish it, which was important, of course, in my evaluation and whether I'm willing to go for that coal turn. Irok replaces Gutenberg with Maria, increases his population using the frugality, builds the swordsman, is now the strongest again, and takes the cavalryman. And the Ocean Liner service is revealed. I was very happy to see it. I do get a bit lucky with the timing here, and I will be able to take and finish it in my next turn. There's actually another H1 colony, so the last 3 events were some colonies, all of them not helping with the population. I mean, the Happy Face does help a little bit from the historic territory that I won. I again was willing to send my excess swordsman, but I'm not able to win it. It's maybe not too bad. I have some decent resource income, not the most population, but I kind of would have still liked to win it for maybe a swordsman or warrior. So I was a bit unhappy of not having drawn a colonization card, but it's also not too bad. Irok at the end is able to win it for just a swordsman. Scipio has taken the scientific method at a turn before, maybe with the intent to just fix the science production as quickly as possible, takes that copy of cannons and builds a step of the railroad. I think my next turn is relatively clear. It's only the question if I want to see it, but at the moment I'm not nicely prepared to win the vast territory. The economic progress, while I have better resource production now with having the Ocean Liner service, it's still not such a great event for me. And I also don't have a good tactics or the politics of strength I also didn't want to push, so I just skip politics here. H3 also starts, and then I will just take and finish the Ocean Liner, and I have now my population income fixed. I have 9 resource, 9 science production. With Anthony Gaudi, I'm starting to develop a bit of a culture lead. I have enough science to get into an H3 government form, so I, with now getting the Ocean Liner service, and maybe also thanks to having done those coal upgrades, felt that I am in good shape now. I draw some cards, a colonization card and 2 aggressions. Irok has discarded the Engineering Genius 1, but still has the Engineering Genius 2 in hand. Finishes the statue, sadly not as efficiently as possible with the Masonry, but still the additional yellows will be quite strong for him with having Maria, and then he will again rebuild the swordsman that he had sent away for a colony. Scipio finishes the railroad, finally is able to go for the selective breeding. It was a bit awkward for him because he had a full hand, and he maybe wants to go for Newton here. Maybe he could have, instead of making space in his hand to develop the selective breeding, could have just played reserves for food. Maybe he will have to do it soon anyway. He, regardless of whether he plays it for food or not, has corruption. And then he could have just developed the selective breeding for free with Newton, and he might need to play it for food maybe soon anyway to get more population. So Maybe that could be interesting, but maybe having those blue tokens lying around could also cause some corruption at future turns, so maybe he was not willing to do that commitment, but I felt like he's in a position where maybe saving a civil action could still be very important, so I was a bit surprised to not going for that line. Now we are at the beginning of H3, so we can maybe take a quick look at the overview. And as I said already at my turn, I was slightly optimistic here. I have the culture lead. As you can see, there's also opera and movies in the row, so I will now also be able to get more culture reduction if I want to. I am in a position to get into an H3 government farm, and I have everything fixed. The thing that I was afraid of the most is the military, because I just don't have a good tactic at the moment, and Scipio has all of those H2 military techs, Irok has Maria, so I did feel that that could be one way how maybe things could get wrong for me here, or of course maybe one of my opponents just finds something very good to invest into. Irok has a very solid position, has Maria for some additional income, has good resource production, a lot of the resource saved up, also is in a position to get into an H3 government form, which will be especially good for him because of having the Statue of Liberty. So I feel his position is completely fine, relatively smooth to play, and Scipio's position is maybe starting to take some form. But because of only having that one farm and still no population income, I do think it's still an awkward position for him to play. But if he fixes his population income, then, as I said, he might still end up being in a fine position. He has still a culturally towards Iraq, and for now has no new, and so at least the science production and the civil actions are fixed for now. Now he just needs the population income, and then he might still have a fine position. And as said, with having those H2 military techs, he might be the best prepared to maybe go for a big war or something. It's my turn, I'm the weakest, so I again skipped on pushing. And here I have maybe some different options on how greedy I want to play it. I could do two things to make me a lot safer if I would like to. I could take the Manhattan Project, but it would be really expensive. But I have some science income and resources, and it could just be a nice way to get some strength that doesn't require any tactic. Then there's also a copy of tanks on the row. If I don't take it, there could be the chance that it is taken away, and with that, I could miss out on the first copy of tanks, and then I am somewhat limited in regards of what tactic I'm able to go for. But it would also be somewhat expensive to take one of those cards. The Manhattan Project just felt a bit too expensive. But I was a bit worried that Iraq might go for it now and that things could get a bit dangerous, so it's something to at least think about. At the end, I was willing to be able to invest into a theater technology here, but a big question is, do I rather want to go for movies or for operas? And I actually decided to go for operas here. And the reason for that is not necessarily because it's cheap or something. I think that's somewhat. I think I have enough resources in science to maybe just go for movies here to be more efficient per worker. But I also have maybe with the Ocean Liner service now a somewhat fine amount of workers, so I can maybe just also build 2 operas soon, and then those are cheaper with the architectures. I felt that is somewhat close, so that was not the reason that I went for the opera. It's basically the question on when I go for the movies, and also now when I go for the opera, the question that I need to answer for myself is, am I willing to take those tanks for 3 now, and after having invested, just to make sure that I have them, to at least be able to go for the conquistadors and also a lot of H3 tactics. And I at the end decided to not take the tanks, because both Irok and Scipio have cavalrymen, both of them have something to do, there are a lot of other interesting things in the row, so I felt I have a decent chance to get that copy, and if it is taken away, then I maybe can still hope for the second copy. But what definitely should not happen here is that the tanks get discarded. Because if that should happen, then the first copy of tanks is gone, with both of my opponents still having the ability to deny the second copy, and then I think things could get really dangerous. And I realized that with the turn that I will be going for here, taking the movies or the operas from the discard spot, it makes a very big difference on how likely it is that the tanks are actually discarded here. We can maybe see it at the end of my turn, because how I use my last 4 civil actions here are to take the military build-up in the professional spots, which also helps me with the military and just felt the most efficient. There's Pierre in the game, there's the internet in the game, the professional sports are quite cheap with having Anthony Gaudi and the architecture. And military build-up gives me a lot of resources, so if I hopefully get the tanks at the next turn, I can just hopefully very cheaply build some tanks. So I felt like that was maybe the best way to invest my civil actions, and now the tanks will stay on that spot. And in order for the tanks to be gone before my next turn, Irok would need to take Manhattan Project movies and reserves, which is possible, but it would take his whole turn, so he would have corruption, and it should be extremely unlikely. But if I only take those movies, then he just needs to take movies and reserves for the tanks to be discarded. It's the second copy of movies, or if he doesn't take a movie, then all of the movies will be gone. So it's not unlikely that he will take a copy and reserves for one civil actions, of course, also. I mean, it's for two civil actions. No, if I take the movies, then. And then, of course, it's also the last copy of movies, and then the reserves are on one. And then if he takes movies and reserves, the tanks would be gone. So I felt, because of that reason, I went for the opera here. But as said, I considered just taking the tanks. But I was hoping that I get them, and then those two cards could just be extremely helpful for me as well, and at least there is a chance that I get a second copy of tanks now, that I make sure that it isn't discarded. It's also not as big of a chance that the second copy gets taken away, because now those tanks will only be gone if actually one of my opponents ends up taking them. I make sure to draw 3 cards, staying the weakest for now. I draw the Impact of Science, which certainly could be a nice impact for me to have. Irok Seeds, and a Crime Wave is revealed, which costs me a bit of culture and a blue token. He indeed goes for the Manhattan Project, which is what I was fearing. He develops the Cavalryman, uses Maria's resources, builds up a bit of strength, and then also upgrades his last coal mine, is willing to let go of the movies, maybe an indicator that he plans to do something with the military. Scipio Seeds, the Prosperity is revealed. I actually gained the most food out of that event. Scipio goes for the civil service, develops it, takes the space flight, the reserves, and the air forces, so he has even more civil actions, but he again delayed his food income. I think he has no famine because of the prosperity that was revealed, so it's interesting that he's willing to delay it for that long. But I mean, the space flight could just be a strong wonder for him now that he is Newton. Having even more civil actions and blue tokens, I think, is also quite valuable for him, and he kind of needs the air forces, so maybe he just didn't find the time. And at the end is again delaying his food income, but he has now all of the military techs plus the air forces, so again I have to be very careful. I have now already built it one opera, so from now on I think I should be careful on how greedily I'm willing to play. I get a population from the ocean liner service, and because of Scipio and also Irok with the Manhattan Project, both of my opponents are looking somewhat threatening, and I think there's one card that I kind of need to take here, and that's actually the Fundamentalism. And not only for myself, but also if I don't take it, Irok can go for Fundamentalism, Manhattan Project, maybe has something like Classic Army, and it out of the sudden gets extremely dangerous for me. So I think the Fundamentalism just helps me a lot to be safe. And with that, I'm willing to take it, and I also will develop it immediately, of course. It costs me a bit of science production, but I still have a good amount of science, and just getting the additional civil action early as possible, also the additional strength, I felt like is just quite important. Then I did get this copy of tanks, so it wheeled around to me, and I could now just maybe build an opera, increase my population or something, but I decided on just first of all increasing my population. I kind of need to do that if I want to get out of corruption, and then I just decided on building 2 tanks. I could have played the military build-up before developing the Fundamentalism to get 10 additional resources, but then I would have corruption, and now I can take that copy of reserves, which might still be helpful, and in case there is some military pressure going on, I was hoping that I might still have a way to use that military build-up for the 10 resources, so at the end I was willing to play it like that, but maybe I could have also just used the military build-up, accepted corruption, and be fine with it, and not having taken the reserves. Maybe I could have done that, because I have now a bit of a strength lead, and it's not clear how quickly I will be able to use the military build-up for its full value again. I miss out on the multimedia, something that I maybe kind of wanted to take, but I think now I'm in a position where I just mainly should focus on making sure that I'm safe. I have already a culture lead, even if I miss out on multimedia, I can just build a bunch more operas. There's Pierre, I can go for professional sports. Multimedia, of course, would be nice to have, but it's not a must. Also, Fleming is not a must. I should mainly be concerned about being safe here. I could reveal the Conquistadors tactic, but first of all, I have a bit of an interest on maybe staying weaker in order to be able to use the military build-up still for its full potential, and also I was not willing to miss out on a draw here. I draw a bunch of impacts, which I was happy to see. Impact of architecture and competition could be very strong for me, especially with the professional sports, as that contributes to both of those impacts. An impact of colonies could at least give me some points against Scipio, so might potentially be a seedable impact. Irok opens the Independence Declaration, but Scipio doesn't have any colonies. Irok goes for the computers this turn, that will make his Manhattan project bigger, increases his population twice, gets some more value from Maria, builds a cavalryman, and goes for another upgrade, so his Manhattan project will be quite big. He could have taken Mandela here, but decides against it and rather wants to keep Maria and maybe wants to wait for one of those other H3 leaders. Scipio, however, will take one of those other H3 leaders. He will go for Steve Jobs this turn, finally upgrades his farm, takes the computers, develops those, takes the endowment, goes for some computer upgrades, just misses a tiny bit of more investment to get out of corruption, and then he can now start scoring some culture with Steve Jobs, maybe get a big space flight, and with that maybe stay in contention. Now it is my turn. I start by seeding the impact of competition, which at the moment is already the strongest for me with having those two tanks. And with the arenas, I felt like, that's actually at the moment safer than impact of architecture or science or colonies. So I seeded that one into the deck, especially because I have the military build-up. So if my opponents build up a bunch of military, then I can just play the military build-up and get more tanks for that impact if I want to. There's another colony revealed actually. The inhabited territory in here was unsure on whether I am willing to send a whole legion army away. I do think it's an interesting colony for me, and I have that impact of colonies in hand that I maybe am willing to see it. But I also don't need it that much, it's a bit of an investment. Then again, for the Conquistadors tactic, which is the one tactic that I'm having available at the moment, I don't need as many infantry units. And so at the end, I was actually willing to bid a lot for that, also to make it more expensive, because for Irok, who has Maria, and also for Scipio, who needs more population, it could just be a very strong colony, and I didn't want to see any of them winning it for cheap. And I felt like if I should end up winning it, it is maybe fine for me. If not, then at least I push the price. At the end, I am able to win it, and I have to send my card and a whole legion army away, which is somewhat expensive, but gives me even more population now. This turn, I really thought it could maybe be nice to go for the internet, then I could maybe go for Pierre, but again, I am already, I think, in a good spot. I have already a culture lead, and there are some other wonders that I could go for. The fast food chains still in the deck. Both of my opponents have already committed to a wonder, so instead I again wanted to rather make sure that I'm as safe as possible, and for that I need the air forces, and taking both air forces and internet is a bit expensive. It's not impossible. I could take the internet here, just build 2 tanks or something, and get out of corruption. Or I don't have enough resource for 2 tanks, but 1 tank and a swordsman or something. But it felt somewhat expensive, and instead I, with the multimedia still being available, rather took the urban growth, took the multimedia, developed the multimedia very cheaply with Antoni Gaudi, built one without using the urban growth, and then I have 1 civil action left that I used to take the efficient upgrade, which can maybe be used to upgrade an arena to professional sports, especially with having impact of competition in architecture. So I'm now in 14 culture production. Of course, it's a bit greedy doing that, but I have now this air force, those air forces, I have still the military build-up reserves, I can very cheaply get into professional sports, so at the moment I didn't feel too threatened and was willing to do that investment. And I don't build any units yet, but I am not in danger of anything, and also again, being a bit weaker could actually be beneficial for the military build-up, and using the military build-up could then again be beneficial for the impact of competition that I've seeded earlier on. Or I think even at this turn. And with the reasoning of the military build-up, I maybe should not do what I do now, which is revealing the Conquistadors tactic, because if I don't reveal that, I stay weaker, and maybe have a better chance of using the military build-up for its full potential. But on the other hand, it could also be nice to be military action efficient, because I have 5, but if I don't reveal the tactic now and maybe use the military build-up at the next turn, then I can maybe build 2 tanks, but then I maybe am in a position to finally reveal the tactic, but then I would miss out on a draw. Maybe I have to keep it in hand for even another turn, but maybe at my next turn there's already the chance that it could be my second last one. So at the end I decided to be more military action efficient. I have already some good impacts, but what I still could really use is a good tactic, and so which is also one of the reasons why I didn't want to rebuild any units, to leave myself more flexible in regards of tactics. And so I revealed it at the end, but it makes it less likely that I can use the military build-up, and it gives Irok 3 additional resources for Maria, so maybe I shouldn't have revealed it, but then again, remembering the standings, it was for me in this position more important to finish before Scipio than to finish before Irok at the time when the move was played. So while of course I still also don't want that Irok gets more resources, it's not as much of a priority as just maybe being more military action efficient. So if that would be Scipio, maybe I would be more concerned, but like this I just wanted to be military action efficient. I do draw some cards. The impact of population is quite strong, especially against Scipio, who that long couldn't fix his food income. Irok, interestingly, is taking Marie Curie for 3 civil actions here, which was an interesting choice, because, I mean, maybe I could take her away, but I can also go for Pierre. Maybe he was worried of not getting any good leader. Maybe he just needed her strength. I don't know what his exact reasoning was here. We could have taken some yellows, maybe. But yeah, he's willing to take her and builds a theology in order to be able to again use Maria's resources to build another cavalryman, takes the engineering genius, doesn't reveal a tactic for now, which is an indicator that maybe he doesn't have a classic army tactic available. Scipio finally can get another population out, now even 2 with the frugality, builds an additional farm, takes the revolutionary idea, the military theory, develops the cavalryman with Steve Jobs, builds a cavalryman, and then takes the urban growth. So he just gets some more culture with Steve Jobs, has finally some food income. Building that farm is quite late, but it still gives him immediately new population at the next turn, might help him for impact, so I think it could still be the correct move, even if it's that late. And again, we have to be a bit careful. Scipio has the military theory, cannons, air forces, and has enough resources and science to do all of that. If he has a good tactic in a war, things could get very dangerous. So again, I should now, after having gone for that 1 multimedia, which was a bit greedy, I should now again focus very much on just obtaining as much strength as possible. I seed an impact into the deck. I think the impact of population, which should be the best one at the moment for me. The event revealed as the civil unrest, no one gets hit by that. I get a new population with the ocean liner, and here I think I want to go for Pierre. It could happen that the age ends before my next turn, and so I just wanted to take and also elect Pierre already. But before I elect Pierre, I will develop the professional sports with the Anthony Gaudi discount. Anthony Gaudi saved me 3 signs in opera, 4 signs on the multimedia, 4 signs on the professional sports, so 11 signs saved, which is certainly not bad. And so I think a strong Anthony Gaudi game. And now, after having developed the professional sports, I will go for Pierre. And of course I could also now go for air forces or something, maybe start building some units. But the thing is, I still maybe want to hope for a better tactic here. And so I, instead of increasing my strength by building units, just decided on building a bunch of arenas. I will take the reserves to have as many resources available for the military. I take the military theory, just getting a bunch of cards that could help me with reaching as much strength as possible. I built 2 arenas, I built even 3 arenas. I don't upgrade the arena yet, which I also could have done. But I built all of those, so I'm nicely prepared for impact of competition and also impact of architecture. I'm at 36 strength now, and I mean, it's a bit greedy what I do here, because I don't develop the cannons, but Scipio is not necessarily in a position to go for a very big war already the next turn. He might need another turn to prepare, and if he should go for that line, then I still have the chance to develop the cannons. And there's also another copy of Modern Infantry left. I maybe could have just taken that one to be safe, but at the end I decided against it. And maybe it could even be enough to just threaten the mechanized army tactic, even if I don't have it, to make myself a very unattractive target for Scipio. Especially with Iraq being the one without air forces, and despite him having the Manhattan Project, he could reach limits on how much strength he can threaten. So at the end I was fine with doing it all like that. One downside is that if the age should end, I'm not in a position to take and finish the fast food chains. I would need to play, I think, 2 reserves and then I just don't have the actions. But I have a culture lead, I have good impacts. I felt like if that should happen, I am still in a good position to win. I draw an impact of strength, which could be interesting. The iconoclasm is revealed. Good timing for me again. I just went for Pierre. Gaudi. If Gaudi would have been removed earlier, that could have been a bit annoying for me. And I guess that was also the reason why Iraq went for Marie Curie for that price. He probably seeded the iconoclasm and knew that soon he might not get a civil action back from the leader, so maybe just get the leader earlier, and it's not that much of a civil action difference then. He goes for the democracy, takes satellites, modern infantry, rockets, and the oil, and we can maybe see what he's trying to do here. He takes as many cards as possible to maybe make it challenging for Scipio to not end the age, but it is just barely still possible if Scipio doesn't take any cards, which at least makes it that he now can't take that patriotism. So Iraq sees maybe the danger that Scipio is threatening, that he could soon be in if Scipio decides to go for war. But unfortunately, he is just missing 1 civil action or the ability to take 1 more card, so 2 civil actions, in order to make completely certain that the age will end. So Scipio, if he wants to, can now still try to set up for a war. So let's see if he will do it. He copies my Conquistadors tactic to be at 28 strength. Scipio offers an international tourism to Iraq. I was happy to see it rejected. Scipio would just get more production phases, and with that Iraq was not willing to accept it, especially because at the moment it's quite close between them, while I have a bit of a lead. Scipio plays the endowment for 6 culture, develops the cannons, plays the revolutionary idea, develops the military theory, all with Steve Jobs, takes the revolutionary idea, takes the efficient upgrade, increases his population, builds a cannon, reveals the modern army tactic, destroys a mine, builds another cannon, and with that he is in a position to, at the next turn, because the game doesn't end yet with him not taking any cards, and he is in a position to, at the next turn, declare war, develop the air forces, destroy some things, and then go for 2 modern army tactics. So that is now very threatening. He can reach quite a high amount of strength. I mean, he has 1 tactic at the moment, so he gets plus 39 from the tactic, and then 2 air forces, 49 to H2 units, 55. So he can go up to 96 strength, which is quite threatening, and I have to be careful and have to do my best to be able to defend against that. But the good news is that Scipio already revealed a tactic. I'm not sure if he needed to do that military action-wise. I think he did need to do it because he needs 4 actions at the next turn to build 2 units and 2 air forces. So he couldn't wait with revealing it, but with revealing it and with that modern infantry coming down the row, I am in a position to prepare myself to copy the tactic. I see the impact of architecture. The impact of agriculture is revealed, which is not really great for me. I get a population with the ocean liner, and it was a bit tricky to prepare for that war. I was hoping that I will be fine, because with my big culture lead I will be able to make it close, and I have that big culture lead, but it was a bit tricky in order to find the right setup. At the end I think I found a fine solution. I developed the cannons, I need to do it, otherwise I will lose them to the end of the age. I take the modern infantry, the patriotism, so that I have as many resources as possible. I build 2 cannons, I develop the modern infantry, I play the reserves again, and go for 1 upgrade. So things that I needed to consider here are, on one hand, I don't have enough science to go for air forces and military theory at the next turn, meaning that I ideally maybe rather want to go for air forces. And with that, I need to make sure to invest some military actions already this turn, because I could have not played the reserves, not gone for the upgrade, and instead take another copy of reserves to have more resources. And the resources, I guess the resources even don't make that much of a difference, but I just needed to spend all of those actions, because the next turn I can copy the modern army tactic, and with the patriotism and my fundamentalism, I have still 4 military actions left after copying the modern army tactic, and with those 4, I have now just enough to go for 3 modern infantry and 1 air force, so that I can go for 2 armies with 1 air force. And because of having that many H3 units and all of those professional sports and the fundamentalism, that would make me safe. The problem is I don't have enough resources for that, which is of course a bit of a problem, or at least not guaranteed. And because of that, I set myself up like this, with building the cannons first and only 1 modern infantry, because in order to be completely safe, and even if I'm not able to build as much, I can at least go for the military theory, just go for 2 modern armies, I can upgrade this to an arena, and I still threaten more strength very likely than Iraq can threaten. But I'm not completely safe. The thing is, now that I have the units spread out like this, I at the next turn, when I copy the modern army tactic, will drop down in strength. And that gives me a chance to use the military buildup for its full potential. And that could make a big difference. And with that I also was really looking at Iraq's turn, how much strength might he gain at his turn. And he might finish the Manhattan Project, that would put him at 41 strength. And 41 would just be enough for me to use the military build-up for its full effect now, because then I could copy to the modern army tactic, drop down to 40 strength, play the military build-up for its full potential, and I have just enough resources, 14 plus 10 are 24, plus 4 are 28, to build 3 modern infantries and 1 air force, which makes me basically completely safe if I remembered correctly. And of course, Iraq might also just build some units, but he might also need to spend some military actions, especially if he also maybe plans on copying the modern army tactic. So I was hoping that maybe I will be able to, that Iraq gets enough strength so that I am able to threaten enough strength. Of course, if Iraq does a close analysis of my turn, he might realize that I need to play the military build-up for its full potential, and of course might take that into account into his preparation. So there's the danger, maybe he will not see it. Depends on how careful he is maybe playing and how closely he is taking a look at his opponent's turns. Yeah, but I also couldn't really do anything better. I need to spend some military actions. I need to get a bit stronger. So I can't just stay in very low strength, because I need to spend those military actions already. And so that will now be very interesting to see on Iraq's turn. But even if Iraq stays weaker, and even if I can't go for 2 modern army tactics with an air force, I still threaten very likely more strength than Iraq. So and I have that culture lead, which makes it maybe difficult for Scipio to overtake me, and I have very nicely prepared for a lot of impact. So I was hoping that even if Iraq realizes the military build-up situation, that I still don't get hit by a war. Again, I'm sadly not in a position to take and finish the fast food chains at the next turn, but again, I don't think I need it really. I can prepare for impacts, and I have some good impacts, and with that I was not worried about it too much. H4 starts. Now I was interested to see how much strength will Iraq gain. Will he just finish the Manhattan Project? He first of all seeds the popularization of science is revealed, giving him a bit of additional culture. He develops the modern infantry, goes for some upgrades, is now at 37 strength, actually disbands a cavalryman, maybe because he doesn't need it for the modern infantry, but an interesting choice. But I didn't take a close look at his turn on how it would have affected him when he would have destroyed something else. He then is now at 39 strength, so far he made sure to be just below the threshold of my 40 strength, that I need to use the military build-up fully. So I was a bit worried. Maybe he has seen my situation and decided against getting any stronger. But now he actually is developing the satellites, takes the engineering. And with that, I am now in a position to use the military build-up to its full effect. I mean, it's somewhat difficult to spot. Maybe Iraq just saw my current amount of strength and just felt, okay, I'm still weaker than him, but of course he also needs to think about me dropping down in strength when I copy the tactic, realizing that I have only one infantry unit actually. So maybe he didn't see that, or maybe he didn't closely consider my position, or maybe he needed the civil actions, but I think he didn't necessarily need the civil actions. I mean, maybe he did. He needs 2 to finish the Manhattan Project, then he needs to play those 2 cards, he needs to develop the rockets, and then, I mean, I guess he could have I could have also, instead of developing those, played the Engineering Genius. Maybe he is in danger of an aggression if he doesn't get stronger. It could, of course, also be a consideration. So, yeah, maybe also, of course, a tough turn for him to make sure that he is not in danger for war. But I do think denying me the 5 resource from the military build-up could just play a big part in making him as safe as possible. Might get hit by a war anyway, but he would certainly be quite a bit safer then. Now it's Scipio's turn, and he actually doesn't go for a war, so he surprised us here a little bit, just finishes the space flight and takes the fast food chains. It would be interesting to know if he has a war, but realized that we are just both well enough prepared to defend. Or if he just doesn't have a war, maybe just went for the turn, first of all hoping that of course maybe he will draw a war, and if he doesn't draw one, maybe just distract us from preparing for our peaceful game plan. And the fast food chains were now not taken, and he can just go for double wonder here, finishes the space flight for 23 points, and has enough resources to also finish the fast food chains at the next turn. And out of the sudden, with him getting another big wonder on Iraq, he also gets a fair amount of culture out of the Manhattan Project, but Scipio will go into the final impacts with a bit of a lead here. Now it's my turn. I decided on pushing the impact of strength in there because I felt my best turn revolves around building a bunch of more strength anyway. Only if the impact of competition is revealed, then my best turn could actually be a bit different. But it would still be fine to just build a bunch of units then. Sadly, the impact of competition is indeed revealed, which I would have improved a bit during my turn, and now that it is out, the impact of strength forces me to a slightly suboptimal line, but it's still a good impact, so even with that, it might have still been the correct choice to seed it, and the impact of competition is a strong impact for me with all of those arenas. I can, in this turn, play actually my modern army tactic that I've just drawn at the last turn, play the military build-up for 10 resources, upgrade my 1 arena, which helps me for the impact of architecture, develop the military theory, which helps for a bunch of impacts, build a modern infantry, destroy this lab, build a multimedia, helps me for the impact of architecture and gives me some culture reduction, and then I take those cards. I sadly am missing 1 civil action to go for another technology, and I have the impact of technology in hand anyway, so that's not too bad. And then I will just use my remaining resources to shift a worker from cannons into modern infantry. Impact of competition is out, but it gives me 2 additional strength, making it even more safe that I will end up being the strongest. Iraq develops the engineering, builds a theology, could help for a lot of impacts. Looks like maybe impact of harmony could be in there. He has 24 in that impact now with building that additional farm. Also the impact of balance is improved, so he is preparing nicely for some impacts here. Finishes the Manhattan Project for 14 points and then develops the rockets. Scipio seeds and opens the impact of architecture, which is also quite a strong impact for me. I get plus 21, Iraq plus 10, Scipio plus 7. Scipio can develop 1 more technology with Steve Jobs, gets 4 culture for that, builds with the urban growth another theology, helps him for impact of harmony, happiness, and also gives him 1 more points for the fast food chains, which he can finish for 20 points. And with that, before going into the final impacts, I have a good lead. I still am very nicely prepared for impacts, for the most of them at least. And with that, I was very confident that I will be able to win this game, but it's quite close between Iraq and Scipio. Iraq is at the moment 10 culture behind, but I have the impact of population and strength seeded, which are both better for Iraq than for Scipio. So after my impacts being resolved, it's even closer between them. And so I was interested to see whether Irok or Scipio finishes at the second place here. The first impact is the impact of strength, giving me plus 14, Scipio plus 0, Irok gets plus 7. Then there's the impact of population, giving me plus 20, Scipio plus 10, Irok plus 16, so my 2 impacts are out. Irok has now a 3 culture lead at the moment. There's the impact of wonders, that's the strong one for Scipio. As you can see, he has a bunch of wonders. It's not even that strong, but he catches up 2 points to Irok. It's even the strongest for me, because my wonders are from earlier ages. Then there's the impact of balance, that's a very strong one for Irok, maybe the reason why he built that additional farm at the turn before, and now he has an 11 culture lead before Scipio going into the final impact, and the final impact is the impact of progress, and that is also quite a strong one for Irok, and with that he gets even some more points on Scipio, and with that is able to finish at the second position, even with a little bit of a lead. So yeah, at the end I am happy that I'm able to win this game. I think I had a strong early game setup. I think pyramids into early iron into Universitas, and it was extremely close on whether I even had a chance to get it Universitas. I do think if maybe Scipio had taken the Universitas away, I could have ended up in a quite more challenging position. But with getting the Universitas, with being a bit lucky with the event order, especially with the reds, but also in other instances with the rebellion and maybe some strength events, I just had a very strong position, I think. In some parts during H2, I think it was a bit challenging on how I want to play it exactly, and I found an interesting move with going for the coal despite having the iron already, and I do think it at the end worked out nicely here. I also got a bit lucky that I still ended up getting the ocean liner service. I almost got punished for not taking the irrigation earlier on, but with the ocean liner service and having Anthony Gaudi, I then think I went into H3 with being ahead. Scipio went for those 4 mines, struggled to invest his resources, so I didn't like that too much from him, but he still made it very close. He still managed to, at the end, get into a reasonable position into H3, but at the end it wasn't enough. Maybe he didn't draw a war, maybe if he could have warred Irok, things could have gone differently. Maybe he just didn't have a war available, but I actually didn't calculate exactly, I think, how much Irok could have had, but I don't think it would have been enough to match the 96 from Scipio. If he goes for 2 rockets here, it's plus 10, plus and plus 21, so it's 31. It would be 76. I do think I calculated a little bit to see how much I'm in danger, and even without getting the military build up fully, I think I was still better prepared, but yeah, so maybe with the war, Scipio could have decided that game. Maybe he was a bit unlucky with not drawing one. Yeah, but at the end, Irok nicely managed to, with some good impacts, finish at the second position, and I at the end was able to win this game. Alright, and with that we can now take a look at the standings before the last game and see how things are looking in the standings. And with being able to win this game, I have secured my so that I at least don't get relegated at the end of the season, because I am now for certain before Sectat, and the last game will be against Let's Jam and Irok, and it's not possible that both of them will overtake me. It's possible that one of them will overtake me, but not both. With that, I have now certainty that I will not get relegated. I can even still match Scipio in points now. So I was very unfortunate about losing that other game that we saw in the video before, because now in that game I actually managed to win the game while Scipio finishes last. So if maybe I would have finished second, or if maybe Sectat would have won instead of Scipio in the other one, I would still be in contention for the first place. Sadly, with that I can match him in points, but I'm losing the tiebreaker against him. And the main thing that still has to be decided is who gets relegated. Sectat at the moment being in third position, but it's looking difficult for him. I think he needs the perfect outcome. For him it would have been a lot better if Scipio would have finished second in the game that we just saw, and Irok had some fewer points, and then he could have hoped that Irok gets second while Let's Jam gets last, and I win the last game. Now the only outcome that leads to him not being relegated is if I win and the other two opponents tie. Then he wins actually the tiebreaker against Let's Jam, I think, and that's the only way how he doesn't get relegated, meaning he is in very big danger, because that's of course a very specific scenario. And then for Let's Jam and E-Rock, it will just depend on their performance in the last game. They need to finish before each other, and that will basically decide who will be the one to stay in the league. And yeah, with that, I hope you're excited to see how the season will end. I'd say thanks for watching, have a nice time, and see you in the next video.